Hi, I'm Patty Liston. I am the founder and president of Standing with Boys, a nonprofit organization working in several countries in Africa. I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, I'm a writer, I'm a published author. I've spoken at the UN. That was a lot of fun. And I've worked in nonprofit organizations for the past 20 years. I love the work that I do, and I love Africa. Regarding Standing with Boys, which we started in 2014, our objective was to be able to teach young men how to become good young men by teaching them how to be honest, to have personal integrity, leadership skills, self-reliance, responsibility, marketable skills training so that they would be able to provide for themselves. Now, where is Ghana? People don't even know, so I happen to have a map here. Ghana is right here in Africa, and it's right this little tiny place right there, right against the Atlantic Ocean. We live right up in the middle northern part in a town called Tamale, where we have started our school, Prosperity Academy. We are hoping to be able to reach as many boys as we can who have a desire to learn a skill that will be able to enable them to become self-reliant and support themselves and a family. Our hope is to be able to expand what we are doing and to add those kinds of skills that are marketable in the area in which they work. That said, we have a wonderful group of people who are Ghanaians who work with us, who help us to be able to understand what is needful, how to make things work, how to teach in a different culture and in a different country, and to help us to recognize those skills that would be most impressed upon these young men so that they will be able to be successful and to have the happy life and the becoming the very best that they can be. Opportunities which are not offered to many boys, if any, in Africa at this time. I started working with people in Africa about 20 years ago, primarily with women and girls initiatives. Girls needed a lot of help. They needed a lot of work, and they needed a lot of information that they weren't getting through the schools and the communities. However, several years later, boys started coming up and asking if there was anything for them because they didn't have any programs for themselves. And I started thinking about that. And several years after this initial questioning by boys, I came across an experience while in Kenya driving with a friend of mine. It was late at night, and there were a group of boys, about 40 or 50 of them, who were living on a meridian that separated a freeway. And as certain cars would go by, they would start throwing rocks and stones at the cars. I asked my Kenyan friend, why are these boys doing that? And she said that quite often the cars would stop by and there would be men in them who would promise the boys food, shelter, clothing in exchange for some favors. The boys would agree because they were hungry and they were cold and they needed a friend. However, after the favors were procured, these men would go around that meridian again and literally open the door and kick the boys out, leaving them even more bereft than they were before. It was at that moment that I knew that while I loved girls and working with girls, that boys also needed attention, and they needed to be able to learn certain skills, and they needed to know that there were those who were as concerned about them as there were those who were as concerned about girls. And that's how I started. There have been a lot of people who have asked, why do I work in Africa? There are certainly needs here in America for women and men, boys and girls, and that is true. But in America, we have a lot of safety nets. We have things for food, we have things for shelter, we have organizations that work tirelessly to be able to help the disenfranchised. So Africa was my country of choice. Ever since I was a little girl, I knew I was going to be in Africa. I didn't know how, and I didn't know why. But all of that manifested itself many years ago when I realized that now was the time to go and to do the work that I knew I was supposed to do. And that is why I work in Africa. Due to COVID-19, we came home after living a year in Tamale, Ghana, thinking that we would only be here for about 3 months, which is now turned into 5 or 6 because the borders are still closed for international travel. However, just because we're not there doesn't mean that work is not being done. Our school, even though it is closed, is prepping for an addition to what we will be doing when we return. And those things are, pardon these very elementary graphics, these things are, we have a school called Prosperity Academy where we teach motorcycle electrical repair. We were going to be adding masonry and automotive repair when we return. We are working on that now with people who are in the U.S. as well as those who are in Accra, businessmen who are eager to be able to support the things that we are doing, to be able to allow young men to work for themselves, to be able to prosper, to be able to feed themselves and a family, and to have a sense of self-worth and empowerment. We are all about self-sustainability. Our philosophy is keep it small, keep it simple, and make it sustainable. We therefore really work on self-reliance with our young men. All who come to our school learn these basic skills so that they can be able to fend for themselves and their families. In Africa, it's a whole community. A young man might be working to feed his self, feed his family, feed his parents, feed his siblings. So the opportunity to learn a marketable skill is almost unheard of, but yet very prosperous for young men who are dedicated to success. And our young men have been. Our life in Tamale is completely different than our life here in the U.S. Tamale has about 450,000 people. 87% are Muslim. We've had the privilege of getting to know many people from all walks of life and from all religions, which has been wonderful. That said, it is hot. It is hot, it is hard, it is difficult work, but the people more than make up for it. They are genuinely friendly. We, because of our age, are considered to be mommy and daddy. And so everyone takes very good care of us. They're very conciliatory. They want to make sure that we are safe. We can't even hold bags of groceries, which took a lot getting used to when I came back to the U.S. and had to push my own cart and carry my own groceries. Tamale is a very interesting part of northern Ghana. It has its own language called Dagbani, which is only really used in Tamale. We've picked up a few words, but it's very difficult and rather harsh. There are more motorcycles there than there are people. There are probably 300,000 motorcycles, which is why we started our school for motorcycle repair. Because when they break down, many people don't know what to do with them. Tamale is beautiful in its own way. It is not America. It is not even Western Europe. It is Africa, and Africa is beautiful, and the people are the ones that truly make the country great. The definition of poverty in Africa is much different than it is here. I recognize that there are certainly people around the world who are suffering from some aspects of poverty. Because I work in Africa, I've become very familiar about what poverty means there. Simple graphic. Physical poverty, which is what most of us think about when we think about poverty. It's the lack of food, it's the lack of clothing, it's the lack of maybe schools or a safe shelter. It's the lack of financial resources to be able to move forward. But as we've come to work in Africa, there's another aspect of poverty which quite often isn't mentioned, and that is the intellectual poverty of the mind. There are children who are eager to learn, but do not have the books, have never been to a library, and who do not have the technical resources, nor does their school. Whenever we go to schools or we partner with the school, The big question that children ask is, can we have a computer department where we can learn more about the ways of the world and more about where you come from and more about other countries? That is almost impossible in certain schools where children are packed in. There's a school that we work with, 2,800 students. The smallest classroom is 85. The largest is 110. That is poverty. That is poverty. And even though the teachers work tirelessly to bring children the knowledge that is needed, they do not have the resources that we do here and in other countries. So almost the poverty, the intellectual poverty, is almost as damning to a child as his or her inability to eat or to have a safe place to sleep or to be able to have appropriate clothes to wear. So yes, the definition of poverty has definitely changed for me. When it comes to the Great Human Connection, I wanted to get involved immediately. I know Matt Casto personally. I worked with him a number of years ago, and I know that his mind is like popping popcorn with ideas coming out of it all the time. And when he talked to me about this idea of connecting people of all different cultures, faiths, geography, walks of life, I was all over that, because being able to travel somewhat around the world, it has been wonderful to meet with, to talk to, and to get to know people from all different spheres of influence, and they have all impacted me greatly. And I knew by being able to come together to meet each of you, whether it was through song or dance or music or drama or art or the compassionate work that you do, that I would be edified and that my life would never be the same because of you and the Great Human Connection. Diversity is breathtaking to me. And so being able to be with the Great Human Connection and to be able to be a part of what they are doing and the wild diversity of everyone who is on this platform is quite a thrill and very unique in its own way. Nothing like this is being done during this particular unique time of our life when we are not able to go out, converse with one another, hug one another, talk to one another. So being able to see what people are doing, to know that life goes on, life continues, and that there is much goodness out there that we can draw and learn from is certainly something that I want to be a part of. And I truly hope that you will too, and that you will pass this good work along. Thank you so much.